Rob Zombie is a stylistic genius. You want poppin' music? Got it. You want bloody horror flicks? Got it. You want poppin' music in bloody horror flicks? Double got it. But as great as his last album is, we're here to talk about his movies. In the catalog of zombie flicks, not the Romero kind, we've got 8 features to talk about. Now, here's your warning. If you haven't seen them all, pause the video and go watch them. Okay, now that we've seen all of them, let's continue. Mr. Zombie comes right out of the gate with one of my all-time favorites, House of a Thousand Corpses. Now, this movie initially sparks a few connections. The most important being that to Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Weird family that works at a gas station and happens to eat people, kidnaps vacationing teenagers and takes them back to their house of horrors for a day filled of murder and mutilation. So okay, maybe the Firefly family doesn't eat people, but arguably their victims suffer an even worse fate. Would you like to be turned into a fish man like Bill? Or how about operated on by Dr. Satan like Jerry? Or what about caught at the last second by Otis like Denise? But what makes this movie so special to me is the seemingly music video inspired style. The wacky edits and transitions bathed in acid wash color support a narrative that is the complete opposite. Underneath the facade of odd-looking killers, a chicken-obsessed clown, and a flirty blonde lies a juggernaut of horror built around blood, gore, murder, and an inclination to root for the bad guys. Now, what's next? Alright, Devil's Rejects. It's like taking House of a Thousand Corpses and wiping away anything that resembles a circus, and you've got yourself a disturbing horror movie. The grittiness that's added to this movie really makes it tough to watch, almost uncomfortable, and let's be honest, isn't that what you want a horror movie to do? I mean, that motel scene is difficult to watch every single time. There's something so real about Otis, Baby, and Captain Spaulding running from the law, all while screaming to each other that they want their Tutti Frutti ice cream. And what's horror without Halloween? If you've listened to other content on this channel, you know already what us here at Cellar Dwellers think of Rob Zombie Halloween films. But if you want to hear our hot takes one more time, here's the short version. The Rob Zombie Halloween movies provide one of the most brutal iterations of Michael Myers to date, with maybe the exception of Halloween Kills. Okay, he still stalks, follows, and stares, but he also flips cars. 1978 Mikey would never. Where the first was at times a carbon copy of the original, Halloween 2 is fresh. It psychs you out by thinking it's going to be another hospital Halloween story, but instead it shifts to show you what Laurie and her friend Annie would have to go through to cope with the attack of the years prior. The audience also gets a peek inside of the early life of Myers. What made him a psycho killer? Who does he hold responsible for his troubled life? What shaped his world view? It's something that has never been seen before, and gives one of horror's most recognizable faces a little bit more foundation. Not that he needed it, but it's there. On top of that, Tyler Mane as Michael Myers is in golden casting. An absolute mountain of a man backed by one of the most destructive forces in the genre. The haunted world of El Superbeasto is the haunted world of El Superbeasto. His next 2 features, The Lords of Salem and 31, are arguably the furthest departure from his usual style. These 2 stand as solitary original ideas. No sequels, no prequels, no spin-offs to speak of. And although they're vastly different from each other, they suit Rob Zombie's filmography nonetheless. The Lords of Salem is a slower-paced film, unlike something like House of a Thousand Corpses, that encapsulates his usual erratic style. The film follows Sherry Moon's Heidi Hawthorne as she slowly becomes more and more corrupted by a witch's curse. And speaking of witches, that alone is a new thing for Zombie to explore. Sure, there are supernatural elements of the Halloween movies, but nothing as substantial as The Lords of Salem. I mean, the whole plot is built around the supernatural rather than outright gore. There are certain long takes with the monster looming in the background unbeknownst to the character to provide the scares rather than a crazed maniac chasing a helpless survivor. If I had to, I'd say this is Zombie's most unique and meditative film. 31 on the other hand, gorefest, total opposite of The Lords of Salem. Even though the audience is never quite privy to why these people in particular are being hunted and killed, get the feeling it might not make it. That is contrary to the, I would say, best cast that Zombie has. Sherry Moon Zombie, Jeff Daniel Phillips, Meg Foster, Malcolm McDowell, and the unequaled Richard Brake. Brake is incredible in this movie, stealing any and all scenes he's in. As the proclaimed Doomhead, Brake's character is tasked with killing any of the survivors, a task which ultimately fails. I suppose the message behind this movie is a sort of eat the rich kind of thing, seeing as the wealthy people are the ones that provide all of the murderers the money and means of death. And finally, his most recent work, 3 from Hell, the third in the Firefly movie trilogy. Unfortunately, Sid Haig's Captain Spaulding was unable to complete this movie due to health reasons, so what we get is always a what could have been. That being said, what we got was a cinematic feast. Richard Brake comes back swinging as Foxy, again giving the performance of the movie. He fills in for Spaulding alongside fan favorites Otis Driftwood and Baby Firefly. This one is more of a character film like The Devil's Rejects. While not as in-your-face as Rejects, 3 from Hell really follows the relationships between characters. I think that this one, more so than the other two, make the best attempt at making lovable villains. By that, I mean getting the audience to root for them. Not like Michael Myers or Jason Voorhees, we root for them for the spectacle. But the Firefly family, we root for them for sympathy. Or at least that's what Zombie wants us to do. That's not always easy for obvious reasons. But either way, I couldn't help myself but feel relieved after they all got out alive. The attempted sympathy is, I think, what makes the Firefly movies so complex and the family such icons. I think it's safe to say that Rob Zombie, for better or for worse, has his finger on the pulse of the horror genre. If you ask me, I'd say he's a blessing to modern cinema. He knows how to create complex characters, iconic scenes, and some really intelligent horror. Whether that be the long take ghost or the reimagining of a pre-established character. I'll admit, his style isn't for everyone, but to dismiss them as junk is only a detriment to yourself. Check him out. Maybe you'll like him. This has been The Basement Files. Stay spooky.